In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, give us the light to know what to do, and then give us the strength to get it done. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So we looked at gratitude in blessings. And so the next thing to look at, for better or for worse, is gratitude in sufferings. Maybe gratitude for sufferings, but you can change the title of the talk if you want in your notes. Just a thought. The toughest time to live the virtue of gratitude is in suffering. More than any other thing that can make your struggle with a virtue difficult is when you're suffering. Because in those moments, it's very hard to see the hand of God when you're suffering. I want to read to you something. Genesis chapter 32. Genesis chapter 32. Verses 20 to 29, but Genesis 32. This is when Jacob, the patriarch, that's in the Old Testament, the guys who make big deals and the big movements with God are called the patriarchs, generally speaking. So Jacob, especially the first four or five, Jacob, the patriarch, gets his new name. Now, when you're renamed in the Bible, both Old and New Testament, that's because you have a new mission. You are identified as a new person. Like when St. Simon becomes St. Peter, that's a statement. That's a big thing. When Abram becomes Abraham in the Old Testament, that's an enormous thing. And so when Jacob is given a new name, first of all, you have to understand, Jacob is on his way back to his country, escaping his father-in-law who was kind of, unpleasant, kind of a dirtbag, okay, just to save you the trouble. And he's on his way back to his home. But he's on his way back to his home where his brother Esau has been running things for forever. I don't know, 15 years, 17 years, something like that. And the last time Jacob saw Esau is older, Jacob is second. And in the Old Testament, at that time, the understanding was the oldest brother gets the blessing from the father and the birthright, the inheritance. The youngest brother gets to live, like the youngest brother's like, good luck. Too bad you're you. That was just the way it was. And Jacob tricks his brother and then tricks his father, first to get the birthright and then to get the blessing. And that's the last time he's seen his brother. So he's on his way back. Verse 20, he gave the same order to the second group and the third and all the other groups. These are the words you are to say to Esau when you meet him. Tell him, your servant Jacob is coming behind us. He was thinking, the gifts I am sending will calm him down, and then I will come before him. Maybe he will greet me kindly. Thus, the gifts went ahead of him while he spent the night in the camp. During the night, Jacob arose, took his 2 wives, his 2 slaves, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of the Jabbok. He took them, crossed over the brook, and carried over all his possessions. So Jacob remained alone, and a man wrestled with him until the dawn. Seeing that he could not beat him, the man struck Jacob at the hip joint. Jacob's hip joint became dislocated while he continued to fight with him. The man said, let me go because it is dawn. Jacob answered, I will not let you go until you have blessed me. The man answered, what is your name? He answered, Jacob. The man then said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have wrestled with God and with man and have won. Israel is a play on wrestles with God. And so the idea is that Jacob's blessing, the man's an angel, if you haven't figured that out. He goes on with, there's a little bit more to the verse, but the angel appears to Jacob in the middle of the night before he crosses over. Once he crosses that river, he's now in his brother's territory, right? So he's crossed everything over. He's done very well for himself. He sends everything he has, literally everything he owns. He just breaks it up into groups, and then he takes anything of value and sends it ahead with his servants. He has hundreds. He's become a village and the patriarch of a village. Then he sends a servant with all the goats, and servant with the sheep, and the servant with the lambs, and the servant with, go. And all of you are to say the same thing. I'm sorry, this is yours. My master is coming behind, but he has sent me as a gift to you. And send me as a gift. So the only thing he has left are his wives and his children. Then he crosses the wives over into the land, and then he comes back, crosses the river back, and stays and spends the night there. so that everything goes first, except for his wives and his kids, and then eventually him, hoping that his brothers' rage at him, rightful anger, annoyance at least, won't end his life. And he sends it all his gifts. And that night the angel appears and wrestles with him. And he wrestles with the angel, and he's winning, or at least he won't lose. And the angel finally cripples him, and he still keeps wrestling. And he says, let me go, I have to go. You've wrestled. And he says, give me a blessing first. Okay, I'm changing your name. He who wrestles with God and won. Wrestles with God and man and won. Things go well for him when he goes back to his brother. Jacob becomes Israel. The new name is Israel. And that is the father of the people of Israel. That's where we get the name of the country, Israel. That's where we get the 12 tribes of Israel, his 12 sons. Everybody with me? A common misconception is that if you believe in God and you live with faith, you don't have a problem with God. That is only because you don't know what it is to walk with God. The name Israel could be given to anybody who has belief in God and lives with God. Because anybody who's walked with God for any amount of time has realized you're going to have to wrestle with the truth. Wrestle with the idea. Because suffering is going to come your way. And you still have to choose whether or not you believe in God. That's the other misconception. People go, if you believe in God, it's because you haven't suffered. Nope. It's that I've chosen to believe in God anyway. And the name Israel of the people of God still stands to all of the descendants, both physical and spiritual descendants of Israel. We who are the people who wrestle with God. So we're going to look at gratitude in suffering. How can I trust God when I don't see him? How can I trust God when I don't hear him? How can I thank him? What is this idiot priest, Pinhead, telling me to thank God in suffering? He was doing okay when we did blessings. Why don't we just skip to something else and then ignore the suffering? Because one of the lessons of the spiritual life is if something bothers you, then you should hang out in it. You ever read something in the Bible that bothers you? Don't pass it. Go get your phone, look up, and do research on it, because it bothers you for a reason. If you ignore it, all you're doing is pretending it's not there, but it is, and your mind knows it, and it'll wear on you. So if something bothers you, you got to go walk over and poke your finger right in it and go, what is this? So to deal with suffering and evil and thankfulness, how? Well, first, let's deal with evil. Evil is real. Evil is very powerful. It's a lot of us have experienced, some of us have done, we've all done evil because we've sinned, but some of us have experienced real evil. So when I say we're going to thank God through the suffering, I don't mean we're going to minimize the experience of evil. Evil is caused by free will. God made everything. That's true. But there is something that God did not make. But it's a lack of a thing. It's not a thing. That's why you say that. You'll see what I mean. We're going to do a little bit of philosophy again. Evil is best described as a lack of good. That's an old theological principle, but evil is best described as a lack of good. So for example, let me get to this. Some people couldn't make it to the retreat. Some people are in their houses right now because of the Rona. It got them. It's less that they have something and more that they lack good health. That's not a great example. I'll give you the best example. This room, any room you're in, if you turn on the lights, you can see. If you turn off the lights, the lack of light is what we call darkness. Is that better? So it's not that darkness itself is a thing, it's that it's a lack of light. Evil is a lack of good. So that's why I can say God made everything, but God didn't make evil. But if you said God made everything, but the lack of it. Think of a limb. If you have a limb that doesn't work, it's not that the limb has something, it's that it's lacking proper use, right? If your arm doesn't work, it's that something is missing from a healthy arm. You get me so far? It's a weird way of looking at it philosophically, but it is a real way, and it's an ancient way. It's very real. But the reason we do that is because when you look at evil that way as a lack of good, then you begin to understand, first of all, how can God make everything? Second of all, how can we limit God? Because our free will can limit God. The only thing that can limit God is free will. Because he chose it. Not because he can't, but he chooses to. Just like a mother can listen to a newborn or a little itty bitty baby that wants to reach up. So the mother reaches up for the child or picks up the child and brings them up. It's not because the kid got there. Because the mother is allowing the child's will, as she understands it, to guide what she's doing for the child. You with me so far? You ever seen little kids play and they wrestle with that and they're like, I fell down. He's allowing their will to influence his physical actions because they can't physically influence his. They're small. I'll fight a kid, whatever. Bring it. I'll fight a toddler, like whatever. No, the reason is because we allow them to influence us. Well, so God is not limited in what he can do. He chooses to limit himself out of respect for our free will. That's a mark of love, a mark of respect. I'm not going to impose my presence on you. Everybody with me so far? By the way, do you remember when you were a teenager and you wanted to stay home and your parents didn't let you stay home for some stuff? That you may not have been ready to do that. And then at a certain point, they let you stay home. They allowed you to act on your free will. They didn't have to, no matter how important you think you are as a teenager. They could just say, no, I'm doing it because I said so. They allow you to. Maybe you figured out that you're old enough, or you're mature enough, or you're safe enough to do it, whatever, fine. It's an allowance. Okay, so when we limit God's will, that's what we call evil coming in. The umbrella analogy I've used a million times, and some of you have heard me say it many, many years. It's handy. The sun is always shining, but sometimes something is in the way, right? If it's the earth, we call that nighttime. The sun still shines. It's just the mass of the earth is between me and the sun. Everybody got that? Does God love me? Yes. Can I stop his love from reaching me? Yes. Take the sun, go outside on a sunny day and open an umbrella. Now the sun is not hitting you. Does God love the devil? Yeah. But the devil blocks him from receiving that love. He doesn't want it. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Why? It puts things into perspective like gratitude does. The bigger thing is the sun. The smaller thing is the earth. The really small thing is the umbrella. But also then you can kind of explain why some statements seem strange. Well, you have to have the philosophical principle behind it. So if God's will is blocked, then that's what we call evil, and that's where things come from. That's where evil comes from. So for example, God made Adam and Eve, and in doing that, he gave them, us, free will. Why? We do evil, yes, but that's what makes good valuable. A dog barks because it has to. It doesn't have free will. When we choose to say something, we've chosen it. That's why when you're with a little kid and you say, what do you say? And they say, thank you. And then they get to that point where you give them something, they go, thank you. And you're like, oh, adorable. Because they said it on their own. You get me? When you choose to do something, it's so much more valuable. But in doing that, you have to give them free will. And in doing that, you have the possibility for them to create evil. Got that? It doesn't seem that complicated. I just walked you through quite fancy theology, just so we're clear. Okay, I'm amazing. I'm just saying. But just so we're clear. No, it matters because as we move forward, you'll see. God didn't create anybody to be evil, but he gave you the possibility to be good. But in doing that, you have to have the possibility to be evil. If I force a woman to say, I love you, it doesn't mean anything. If she chooses to say, I love you, it means everything. So God had to let us be free to choose against what he wants. Otherwise, our love for him is meaningless. You with me so far? Okay, now we're going to start looking at when we choose not. So is that an end to God's plan? If God creates someone and they're supposed to be a good person, that's everybody. And somebody chooses to be evil, really evil, horrifying, monstrous. Is that the end of God's plan? That's it? Oh, well, he cut off God, the light can't reach anymore. No, that's why it's an analogy. An analogy, like all analogies, falls apart at a certain extent. It's a good parallel, but it goes further. God often intervenes through others and in other ways. In fact, I'd propose to you that one of God's favorite things to do is come in at the last second and save people. Oh, come on. Okay, look it up in the Bible. You look up a Bible commentary, a digital one, and you can look up by term and look up God saves and he saves and the Lord saves. You're going to get tons and tons of hits. The Bible is full of that phrase. The Lord saved, the Lord got me, the Lord picked me, the Lord drew me out of the clay, the Lord, Think about it. It starts from the very beginning. The fall of Adam and Eve. The worse the evil, the greater the good God seems to like pulling out of it. I think he likes the Indiana Jones last-minute hero thing. I'm just saying, every time. The fall of Adam and Eve, the first sin. God swoops in and says, yes, but from your descendants, I'm going to give you something amazing. Okay, so Jesus comes. Way! Human beings, being, awful, manage to go, what we can do? We can kill that guy. So God saves from Adam and Eve, and Jesus comes, and we're like, yeah, but we can also kill that guy. And we call that day in English Good Friday. What a strange, funny way. Good. Of all the days that wasn't good. But it's not because of what we did. We committed deicide, the murder of God. What God says is, big evil. Watch this. Easter. The greater the evil, the greater the good he likes to pull out of it. Why? Because we're not God. We can limit his will, but he really intends for our good, so he's going to find a way. It reminds me of like that mom who grabs like a 3-year-old. No, I don't want to give you a kiss. The mom just grabs the kid and gives the kid 50 kisses. And the kid starts giggling after a while. The mom's like, no, what do you mean no? And the kid starts giggling after a while. And you're like, that didn't work. Their no went on for a bit, and the mom's like, no, I love you anyway. Or the teenager says, I hate you. And dad's like, well, I love you too. Go upstairs. Get out of here before I lose my patience. And the kid's like, and that doesn't take the bait. The kid's like trying, and dad's not going to take the bait. He's like, no, don't care what you're going to say. We're related. And you sometimes have to do that. In fact, I would say that that's one of the more pure moments of love. It may not be a serious moment, but it's more pure. It's easy to be loved when someone's loving you. It's when someone's being really unlovable. When they're really being a pinhead, that's when the love matters more, when they're being difficult. So God tries to find a way to guide us. Now, it's always respecting our free will. Think of a symphony. Each instrument has to play. And if one of them plays on key, it sure makes that song sound bad. But there's so many instruments that some of the others can come around, and maybe even if you have master musicians, they'll do that. Just watch a band do it. And they'll play music, and maybe they'll freestyle, right? You have moments in music where people can freestyle in a band. And then each guy from the band steps up and does their little thing, right? They can do whatever they want, so long as they stay on rhythm and key. Then it sounds amazing. But if they start playing off key, it's like a train hits the music. So as long as we surround ourselves with people who are on key, people who are trying to walk in grace, then the music will come out, even though everybody's playing their own music. Wait, did I just explain free will perfectly? Oh my gosh, I did. All right, no. Not perfectly, but like amazing. No, I didn't explain it enough, but that's for another retreat. But at least it's an idea. If you think about symphonies, music, you can catch it. You'll understand what I'm saying over time. Because if one person can play off key, it messes up the whole song. So the people in your life, you got to make sure you keep people in your life that are on key. Then they can do whatever they want, but it'll sound amazing. And the conductor is in charge, making sure everybody stays. The guy who wrote the music and is guiding everybody else, he makes sure it produces something beautiful as best he can. Again, within your free will. The hardest thing is to recognize when God is saving. That one's tough because you may not see it. A lot of times we don't. That's why you pray. That's why we try to pray when we're okay, when we're happy. It's just like being healthy. I refuse to try. But I hear that people who are healthy work out or eat healthy when they don't need it, so that when they're like sick, their health apparently seems to help them. I refuse to figure out if that's true. So I've read about it and I refuse to find out. I have an experiment with God. It's different. This is different. That's why I need more pizza. But people who are healthy, it seems to be, right? I mean, look, one of the biggest factors with this sickness going around is your health. In fact, that is the biggest factor. This sickness seems to be not nearly as dangerous depending on your health level, but very dangerous depending on your health level. It's a factor. It's a cofactor. It's not. It seems to be. So all those people who were eating all that healthy food and doing all that exercise and everything, apparently they're maybe at a kind of advantage. Obviously, I'm fine, but no, yeah, all those people who were healthy all those years, I'm like, oops. That's what I'll say. well, one of the factors is your weight and how you eat and what you're diet. And you're like, oh, that's gonna be a problem. Because it changes, it does. This sickness is actually probably the clearest factor you can, honestly, probably the clearest factor in anybody's life right this minute at least, about health mattering in the long run, even if it doesn't matter in the short run, is this sickness right now. People who are healthy are, I know there's all kinds of exceptions and things, but generally speaking, the more fit a person is, the less in danger they seem to be. And like by a lot. And so it seems to be a thing that's worth keeping in mind. Well, the same thing with your spiritual life. If you only pray when you're in an emergency, that's good. But it's going to be much harder to persevere. The example I always give to people, if there was a fire during the retreat, because I was on a retreat once when there was a fire. That was fun. It wasn't a big fire, but if there was a fire from the retreat, I have to run from this room all the way down the long hallway, all the way down the other long hallway, longer, get to the chapel, get to the sacristy, get the key from the tabernacle, get the Blessed Sacrament out, and either consume the Blessed Sacrament or leave another way. I will make it to the door. I'll get the Blessed Sacrament, I'll get to the key, I'll get to the Blessed Sacrament, I'll make it down the stairs, and I'll get outside. I know this building well enough. I will die once I get outside. I will hand it over to someone and go, keep it safe, and then goodbye. The good news is I'm hoping that counts for something with God. That's my hope is when I get there, God's be like, really, man? Come on, I saved the Blessed Sacrament. Yeah, all right, come on, get inside. Like, woo, woo. You're going to get a perfect body when you get up there. Relax, all right? I don't know what you guys are like saving. This is the jalopy you get now. This is your warm-up car. You get the streamlined new edition, LX, when you get up there. Relax. So, no, yeah, but if I'm a healthy person, I run all the time, or I jog all the time, and get into the chapel and doing all the things and run for, I'll be fine. I'll probably come back in and get some more people. Do you see the difference? But if I only run during the emergency, I'll make it. I'll get through, but it'll be a near thing. If it was a much, much bigger building, we might have an issue. Well, if you only pray when you're in an emergency, you'll pray and it'll have an effect. But there's a very real chance that you'll run out of steam. You'll get tired. You'll run out of spiritual breath, if you want to say it that way. That's funny because the word in Hebrew for breath, one of the words is ruah, which is also the word for spirit, like Holy Spirit. But anyway, so you'll run out of breath. That's an interesting little fun homily for another day. And what do I mean by that? Well, what happens is you get tired. When you get tired, when you're suffering and you get tired spiritually, that usually means what we would call bitterness, lack of trust, resentment. People who are not spiritually tired and suffer, you've seen them and they impress you because they still have an open heart. They still have a soft heart. They're still willing to give people a shot. People who have suffered and are not spiritually tired or fit, they get bitter and they get mean. They've suffered and they tell you they've suffered and they think the world should suffer too. Is it Man's Search for Meaning? I think I had brought a copy of Man's Search for Meaning. At the very, very end of the book, Dr. Frankl leaves. He survives. I'm not spoiling it for you. He wrote the book, so clearly he survives. But he survives the Nazi concentration camp. And because someone's going, I didn't know. Well, bro, who wrote the book? So he survives the Nazi concentration camps. And as he's walking out to get help from a local town, he's lost a ton of weight. Most people have not survived. They're freed by the Allies, and he decides to get some food or something for everybody. They don't know what to do. Because the guards just left because they knew the Allies were coming. So they just walked away. They shot a bunch, as many as they could, and they just drove away. And so the Allies are coming, but they need to eat. Doesn't matter. And so they walk, and they get to this cornfield, and he's with another survivor of the death camp. And he gets to this field of food. And he walks naturally, instinctively, as any of us would do. Even if you don't know anything about farming, you would turn to follow the rows because it's cleaner. It's easier to just follow whatever way the crops are planted. But that doesn't mean you're walking in a straight line toward the town. And the other guy just starts walking in a straight line, smashing and breaking. He says, what are you doing? You're going to mess up the crops. And he says, we've suffered. And it's the last part of the book. And he says, I realized then that even after, because the book is about his experiences, psychologically speaking, his experiences surviving a Nazi concentration camp. And at the last part of the book, he says, I realized just because you survived doesn't mean they hadn't changed. In a sense, the Nazis had won. Hitler had always wanted to prove that Jews and anybody else he wanted to put in prison were animals. But he's cheating, right? Because he treats them like animals, and he's hoping that some of them will just act like animals. They'll steal bread from each other. Some of the people who are, innocent people who are being arrested will fight each other, kill each other, eat each other. And that way Hitler could say, see, they're animals. Of course, he's forcing. But most didn't. The vast majority of people said, no, we're going to be honest and kind to each other, even if you're going to abuse of all of us. But every once in a while. And so as he's leaving the camp, so right at the end of the book, he says, I realized I still had a choice because the book is about his psychological experiences during the camp. So this is the last day he was freed. So the book ends. And he says, I realized, we still had a choice about how it changed us. When you suffer, you have a choice about what it will do to you. You choose that. You have a choice, by the way, of how any experience changes you. Any experience changes you. We'll circle back. Think about that. When you're if not, otherwise you'll have bitterness, lack of trust. You look out only for yourself. When you are past evil, this is a little bit of help. When you get out of the evil, when you survived it, that's when you can look back and then look for the good in it and what to be grateful for. When you're in it, it's really hard. You can, but it's very, very hard. Work your way up, right? You don't start by, you don't start by fighting in a war. You start by learning what a gun is, which end is the dangerous end. Then you train, you march a bunch, you learn what a uniform. No, yeah, you start from there, and then when you get to war, you'll be able to do something. A lot of people, the reason they fail in their spiritual life is they try to fight the big battle, then they fail. And I'm gonna go, well, bro, you shot yourself. Oh, okay, that was the wrong end? Yes, hold the gun this way. And you teach them. So start with little things. But yeah, you can find good and what to be thankful for even in the middle of evil, but you're better off starting with looking at your past, the evils that you've survived. Blessed Jean-Pierre de Caussade, that was a book over there, Abandonment to Divine Providence, a little itty bitty skinny thing. In it, he uses one of the analogies, if I remember correctly, he used an analogy of a candy in a father's hand. And he says, a father always has a candy for their child. This dad is a wonderful dad, and he always has candy for the child. Sometimes the fist is open. Sometimes the fist is closed. But there's always the candy. And the child, after a while, knows, oh, this guy always brings me candy. I like it. So he opens so sometimes when he closes it, he never closes it so that the child can't open it. There would be no chance. Again, the child would never be able to open a man's hand against his will. He just holds it closed, so the child has to kind of pry open each finger little by little. I've done this with children, and it's adorable. You see their little itty bitty fingers grab your giant big finger, and they open little by little, and they're smiling the whole time because they figured out. They're like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. God always has a blessing for you. Sometimes the blessing is obvious. That's when your life is great. That's when he's holding the blessing open-handed. But when he closes his fist, there's still a blessing. I don't see it. Yep, you're going to have to figure out how to open the hand. But it's there. Look, we just celebrated Christmas. Technically, this is the last evening of Christmas in the new calendar. Tomorrow is the baptism of the Lord, which is like a transitional day. It's a nothing day. It's its own day. It's not part of either season. And then we begin ordinary time. And so, do you realize if we got to speak to St. Joseph, he'd be like, why would you do this, bro? St. Joseph would look at you and be like, one time I had an accident when I was a little boy. I peed myself. You want to have a statue of that too? You don't know what I'm talking about? Do you think he was thrilled? This man who was a skilled carpenter. Carpenter is not a great translation. Mason, woodworker, construction worker. And he had to have the woman that he loves give birth amongst animals in a barn and lay the child that he's to care for as his own son in a trough for food. It's crazy. We make statues out of what St. Joseph would have been incredibly ashamed of. You think about it. A guy loves this woman. He's crazy about this woman. He marries this woman. An angel appears and says, yes, you're going to have a wonderful marriage, but you're not going to have a child. God himself will give you this child. And he goes, okay, that's got to hurt, but he willingly tries and moves forward with it. She gets pregnant, and they have the census, and then during the census, she gives birth, and there's no room for them at an inn. And not only that, she has to give birth amongst animals. What is she, an animal? And then he has nowhere to put the kid. So he has to lay them in a trough, food trough. We say manger, but a manger literally means a food trough. What? He was not, I'm sure, thrilled. He's not like, they're going to make statues about this one day. Everybody in the world, we're going to have children have a little itty bitty one, and they're going to make it out of paper, and they're going to put me standing right there. No, this would have been one of his greatest embarrassments. I remember sitting with this I've sat with this many, many times. Think about poor St. Joseph. When I tried to do something nice for someone and it came out horrible, And they're happy with it, but I'm embarrassed. I'm like, no, I really wanted to do it well for you. I want to do my best for you. I think you probably had that experience. I think we all have. You did something, you really set it up for someone, and then the food burned. Or something went wrong, or they couldn't make it, or you didn't make it, you made it late, and you did. And the person's really cool about it. They're like, don't worry, I know what you meant to do. The gift didn't arrive on time. And they're smiling anyway, they're really polite, and they were raised right. But you don't feel thrilled. You're like, this stinks. Now let's make statues, and everyone will have their own. Forever. But out of St. Joseph's, probably, I'm pretty sure, out of his greatest shame, we celebrate every year. It's not Christmas if you don't have a manger and a little crash. What is the matter with you? You make it out of paper if you have to. I don't know if they do this anymore. You get the toilet paper rolls and you put like a little Joseph on the outside, a little Mary on the outside, and a little baby Jesus. You could take the inside of the toilet paper roll and then you take it and you cut out from the internet and you make a little Joseph and they stand up on their own. It's for little kids. You always do something. But you see how God took something awful for St. Joseph. From his perspective, any man here who has children, you'd lose your mind if I put you in that situation. You'd sit there and go, no, this is my kid. I can do better than this. No, you can't. You're going to do it there. Do you know what? They lay him in the straw. Do you know what you use straw for animals? Not just for eating, for the other end. Yeah, straw is absorbent. It deals with whatever else the animals do because they don't know any better. They don't go to the bathroom. Sheep and donkeys and stuff, they don't go to, I'm going to go to the bathroom now. No, they just, let it go. So you take a lot of straw and you make sure it absorbs that up and then you sweep it out of the way. And you have to lay your wife there? That's where she's going to give birth? We do it all the time. We don't realize that we acknowledge God taking good out of evil all the time. But because we see it with that whitewashed, clean, 2,000 years ago statue quality, we don't even see it as evil till someone crazy like me has to point it out to you and rub your face in it. And you go, oh yeah, hey, Joseph probably was a little bit. I was like, a little more, I think, than a little bit. And then you realize, right, you've learned to see the good when you move past it. In Genesis, God makes creation, right? God makes this, God makes this, God makes this. And at the end of every part of Genesis, at the end of every day, in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, when he creates it, God called it good. God looked what he made and called it good. God looked what he made and called it good. Do you know he didn't call creation? Safe. He said it's good. He didn't say it's safe. Don't believe me? Leave. Go for a walk in the woods for a couple days. Nature is not safe. If the weather doesn't kill you, the animals might. If the animals don't kill you, the ground might. When you hit it at a fast speed because you didn't see the cliff. Nature is beautiful. It's good. It's not safe. Human beings are good. We're created good, but we're not safe. God, he's a little bit of a cowboy. He likes, I think, and if you don't believe me, remember, this is the God that created canyons, gravity, all kinds of natural drugs, some good, some kill you. All kinds of this is the same God that did this. Earthquakes, all these things. The same dude who made all of it. He made nature good. He didn't make it safe. And look at how St. Paul calls the fall of Adam and Eve. He says, oh, happy fault. Happy how? They sinned. The first sin. How? Well, because of that evil, God decided to give us a Redeemer. We needed a Savior, and so we got a Savior. We got the incarnation. We got Jesus himself to come on the cross, to show his example of how he lived, to preach, and then to show us the most extreme, terrible example of his love, his death. But then we went and killed him on Good Friday. God brings something out of that. The darkest moments of humanity, God can bring good out of it. It doesn't lessen the evil. That's why I started with evil is a terrible, real, powerful thing. God bringing good out of it doesn't lessen the evil, but the evil doesn't lessen the good either. The gold still has value, even if you have to go really far down into the mine to find it. You with me so far? Okay. So now we're going to look at evil in our own lives. There's two types. The second kind of evil is very minor, and we'll just touch it at the end. But the bigger type of evil is evil that's suffering caused by others. Now, we did this earlier in the last conference. So we said, people, and the good, well, now we got to do the bad and the ugly. Goals we looked at. We looked at goals we reached. What about the goals we haven't reached? or we never reached, or we will never reach. Or the goals that you reached but weren't what you thought. You know, you get what you wanted, and sometimes that's worse. Or the goal you weren't allowed to reach. Oh, geez, Father, it's a real happy day, huh? No, I want you to look. I told you, we looked at the good, now we're going to look at the bad. Can you see something that came out of it that could be good? Now, this is not so easy. We'll walk through it, but that's what we're going to do right now. Looking at evil can be tough. It can anger us. It can scare what comes out of us. But is there a gift there? Was there a gift there? Can I be grateful for some of the people in that situation? No, they were bad. Oh, well, then don't be grateful for them, but I can be grateful for the others. Who helped me out of it? Who is helping me out of it? Who inspired me? Maybe not even knowing. I told you, sometimes you can open someone up by accident. You're just walking. You just say something. You know, you give someone, oh, here, look, we got something extra. And you're like, it was my birthday. Nobody knew. Oh, I can be grateful for that person. Do they know that I did it? Doesn't matter. I'm still grateful for it. That they helped me. Okay, of course, more classically, it's somebody I'm going to for help and they want to help me. It's fine too. But I can be grateful for both. Can I be grateful? This is tough, but can I be grateful for a part of my path, even if it was dark, because it did bring me to where I needed to be? That's tough. But is it possible? I don't know. One of my friends from the seminary left the seminary. Well, many of my friends from the seminary left the seminary. When I was in the seminary, the percentage of it was about 2/3 of the men left the seminary before they made it through the years. So it was actually normal not to be a priest. If you count the guys that started, 2/3 of them wouldn't make it. Either they were asked to leave or they left. So I had a lot of friends who would have been priests but are not. They're ex-seminarians. One of them, I remember I was at his wedding. I wasn't a priest yet, so I attended the wedding. And then I went to the baptism as a first kid, and the baptism as a second kid, and you get where this is going. And he was a little bit older than I, and I remember we had a good conversation. We were always very close. We lived together for years and years and years, thinking we were going to be a priest, and I kept going. He didn't. Wonderful woman he met. And I asked him, hey, do you regret that? The time you spent in the seminary. And he'd spent many, many years because he actually came from another country, did seminary over there, came back to this country, did some more seminary over here. So he could have been like a priest 3 times over. You know what I mean? Like he was extra priest. Well, twice over. And he said, no, because I think it made me a better Catholic father. I didn't know what to say to that. I was like, wow, I hadn't even thought it. So obvious, but I was so close-minded. This is why you do this, and this is what you get out of this. And since you didn't get out of this, then what do you feel about it? But he'd learned, no. The years he did in another country, and then had to repeat and do it in this country, he said, no, it made me a better Catholic father. Do you see, maybe, I'm not saying I can like what I went through, but maybe I can see what came out of it. Maybe. Sometimes the gift is the only grace we received. Sometimes the gift is only the grace that we receive to get through it. That's true too. In the darkest parts of suffering, in the darkest parts, the absolute darkest, well, you're still here. So you had some grace that you managed to pull. Maybe it was your own natural grace, maybe it was God's grace, but you definitely made it because you're here right now. So what am I supposed to be grateful for? The fact that you had that grace. Maybe that's the only good thing, but it is a something. You are tougher than you thought you were. All of your worst days of your life, you're still here. You're tougher than you thought you were. Just for learning that about yourself, you can be grateful, even if you hate and detest every other part of it. Sometimes we can only offer others to help survive or even avoid them, right? Sometimes the only grace of the very darkest places is not much for me, but at least I can learn and help somebody else get through this, or maybe even avoid it. I can warn others. One of the most beautiful things about human beings is that we do that. We set up whole societies to help people. like little clubs and groups that we go, look, I messed up, don't do this. They go to schools and they talk about substance abuse or alcohol abuse. Survivors of different kinds of psychological, physical, or sexual abuse go and reach out to other people to help them. Don't do this. I messed up. Learn from my mistake. Or you went through it. Fine. I got through it. You can get through it too. Do you realize how beautiful that is about us? No other species can do that or would. We're so crazy. I love it. We're like, yeah, that was terrible. I'm going to help you. You'd think, I'm never going to think about this again. Nope. And what we figured out is, time after time, psychology has proven this, it's actually better for us when we help another person. We heal better. Right? The guys who founded Alcoholics Anonymous talked about that. They said, we don't know how it works, but we were drunks, and we figured out if we talked to other drunks about drinking, we didn't drink. They're very, direct men. When you read their journals, like I picked up their journals, they're very direct men. We're drunks. And so what they first did was they didn't know how to deal with alcoholism at the time. So they would just go to the precinct or to the insane asylum, to the hospital, because people would get their families committed because they're alcoholics. They'd show up. In one of their famous cases, they went to this woman. Her husband was locked up. And she was like, we'd like to help your husband. She's like, are you guys doctors? Not really, no. I mean, I'm a doctor, but not for this. What are you going to do? We don't know. But we think if we can talk to him, we can get him to stop drinking. How? We don't know. But when we talked, we didn't drink as much. We didn't feel as much drink. Can we go? That's literally what they would do over and over and over again. Just knock on like hospital doors, or they hear about a drunk and go, hey, can we meet? What are you going to do? Talk. How's that going to help? I don't know, but it seems to help us. And it does. That's the thing. They didn't have the science behind it, but they understood what worked. It still works. And we've used it for tons of different things. Overeating, for smoking, for narcotics, for drugs, we figured out that sharing my darkness, I can actually help you get out of yours and I get out of mine. That's insane. We just think of it as normal because we're used to it. But do you realize how crazy that is? We can't do that with anything physical. I broke my leg. So if I put my broken leg next to yours, we'll both have broken legs. I have to give a silly analogy because I don't think people grasp how insane what we're saying is. But that's exactly what we do. My broken heart is going to heal by healing your broken hurt heart. And then they won't be broken or hurt anymore. That's beautiful. And maybe that's the only thing we might be able to be grateful for from a situation. I still think that's something stunning. What a beautiful thing. I can help somebody get through it. Sometimes the only thing we can be grateful for is someone else who helped us through it. I can't be grateful for anybody who made me go through it. I can't be grateful for what I did. I'm not ready to share or to help anybody else in it. Fine. Can you be grateful for the person who helped you get through it? Because usually someone stepped up. Not always, but sometimes. Maybe after the fact, but they helped you move forward. I'd be grateful. I had moments like that. Someone was there. I was like, that person was there. Sometimes they don't even know, like I said. They were just being nice kind of a thing. They knew something was up, so they were around you. But we can be grateful for that. And finally, sometimes, not always, there is more of a lesson. It depends on what happened. Sometimes I can learn something from it. Sometimes I can't. But sometimes there's something I can learn from it. I can go, okay. Now, if your lesson is don't trust people, wrong. That's the bitterness. You were sleeping when we talked about that last part. If your lesson is people are awful, you missed that part. If your lesson is look out for number one, and that's it, you missed that part. We already covered those parts. Like I said, there may be no lesson. At least any lesson that I can take from it to use for my life for the future. There's absolutely true. But sometimes there is. It is hard, but we need the courage and the grace to look into the darkest parts of our past and our history and our pain, to ask for the grace to see. What am I supposed to see? Now, like I said, this morning, always start a journey looking at yourself and especially at evil by asking Christ to be with you first. Because otherwise the devil will throw in your face as much as he can your own, you're guilty for it. Even if you have zero culpability for it, he'll throw it in your face. So you always want to start it with a prayer. Okay. Otherwise, this is why you have the famous atheist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre or Nietzsche, where Jean-Paul Sartre, at least they were honest. The new atheists, I have no patience for them. They're not honest. And I've read their works. But the old atheists, I respect them because at least they're honest. Jean-Paul Sartre said, life is absurd. There is no God. Life is absurd. And therefore, everything is meaningless. Just live however you want. At least he's honest. And it was suffering that drives them there. They go, well, if you can't control suffering and suffering doesn't mean anything, then forget it. Who cares? It works if you're looking at it that way. Did anybody here ever see that movie, No Country for Old Men? Good film. Not an uplifting film. Heads up. Just letting you know. Because the Coen brothers who make them are nihilists. Nihil from the Latin word for nothing or zero. So they don't believe life has any meaning. So their movies always have an absurdity to them. Even their comedies have a silliness to them. Well, this is not a comedy. And there's a scene in which two men are chasing a third man who's found money from a drug deal gone wrong. One is a little bit, they're both shady, they're both bounty hunters, but one's a little bit more normal. He pays off people and tries to figure it out. And the other guy is a force of nature. He's a monster. He could care less about anything. He'll kill whatever's in his way. It doesn't matter. And the force of nature catches up with the bad guy, the traditional normal bad guy. And he sits him down with a gun aimed at him in his own hotel room. He gets the jump on him. And he says, tell me, making all the decisions that you have had and all the rules you live by, that I don't live by, and they brought you here, what purpose did they serve? That's a pretty good question. All the things you did brought you to here where I'm going to beat you and kill you in a minute. What good was your life the way you lived? At least that's honest. If you're a nihilist, that's honest. If you're an atheist, that's honest. It's like, yeah, nothing matters anyway. My problem with the new atheists, they act like things matter, and then they go, why? Because they should. Okay, go over there. I'm not talking to you no more. I talk to adults. You go sit at the kids' table. You talk to the older school atheists, they're like, yeah, you're right. So do what you want. Nietzsche's answer was take whatever you want. Sartre's answer was nothing means anything anyway. Okay. Well, that's a nihilistic way of looking at things. What does it matter if you did everything and it didn't matter and you got here anyway? Well, the answer only works if you believe in a God. If you don't, the force of nature guy is completely right and he shoots him and the movie keeps going. It's not a spoiler, it's a minor plot detail. But if you believe in it, then you go, well, yes, but the way I got here matters because I kept my soul clean. Even if I fail here, there's more to the story than this. But that only works if you believe there's more to life than this. If there's nothing more to life than this, then he's right. Steal, kill, and whoever dies with the most toys wins. The only way to live as an honest person like that is just true. Well, no, you can be a good person anyway. Why? Why should I be good? You can die for a country. You can die for the country. I'll be here. You can't convince someone to do a sacrifice for something greater than themselves. They don't believe in something greater than themselves. But if you do, then the road that you may, now I'm saying this to you here, the road that you've been through, as bad as it might have been, can you keep your own soul clean? Because that matters. It doesn't matter, I ended up in jail and I ended up in trouble. No, yeah, but your conscience is yours and it belongs to you and it's clean. You kept it clean in the middle of the darkness. You blow it off and it's yours. That's the gold a lot of times, maybe the only gold. Was God working through someone in that darkness? Can I be a help to others who've gone through it as well? Is there a blessing or maybe even a lesson or growth? Those are some of the questions to ask when you're going to go through dark things to be thankful. Because again, the whole point of the retreat is to orient us to be have a more thankful heart. Why? You weren't paying attention to the first talk. Because then somebody like, well, you could explain. No, I already did. Good. This train keeps moving forward. There's no reverse. Now, I wanted to talk about experiences and then the other kind of evil, and then we'll finish. Experiences. Experiences change us. They do. In fact, experiences change us more than time. Mostly, time and experiences line up, obviously. Mostly, time and experiences line up. So the older someone is, the more experiences they have. Okay, mostly, but not always. For the men's evening I had a few weeks ago, I guess it was a few weeks, I have no idea. Time is meaningless to me now. I showed Stand By Me. It's an 80s movie about 4 friends who go find a body. It's based on a Stephen King novella. Stephen King doesn't only write horror. People think he only does. He also writes ridiculously heartwarming stories that you're like, this is Stephen King? Really? There's no clowns or dogs or nothing? No. You're like, Oh, yeah, he does. He actually writes quite beautiful. So they made a few of them into movies. One of them was Stand By Me. It's a great movie from the 80s. And in it, one of the characters says I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's worth watching. It's a fantastic film. One of the characters says, we'd only been away from home for a couple days, but for us it felt different. When we got back to town, the town was smaller somehow. We don't understand how, but now the main character is narrating. He's an older man you meet at the beginning of the film, at the end of the film, but he's narrating, when I was 12, I saw my first dead body. And that's how the movie goes. And it's not about the dead body. It's about the kids and their journey, and they go camping in each other's houses so they can get away and then go because they heard something happened. They get back to the town at the end of the story, and he says, we felt somehow different. The town felt smaller. And I remember watching that and going, what a brilliant way of describing the difference between time and experiences. This is why, why is that? Well, because human beings are strange. We don't only belong to visible creation. There's a part of us that is invisible, that is supernatural. There are things that are non-corporeal that matter to us. No, there are not. Yes, you are. You know what justice is. If I say you're not being fair, every single person in this room knows what I mean. How? Show me what fair is. Draw for me justice. You can't. It's a concept. It's an idea. The number 4. What is it? Show me the number 4. Now you can show me a symbol of the number 4. You can't show me the number 4. But the number 4 is more real than you and me. Number 4 was here before we were here, and it's going to be here after we die. So there are non-corporeal things, non-physical things that are real, more real than we are. Human beings are both, right? We have a body and a soul. We understand non-physical things. I know these whole neighborhoods of New York City. I know the neighborhood like the back of my hand. My head is not the size of those neighborhoods. It's pretty big, it's close, but it's not the size of those neighborhoods. Why? Because knowledge is not a physical thing. I can fit a whole city in my mind. And it's not a physical thing. And so human beings have that, but that messes us up with time. So time, this is why you've ever spent a weekend or a time, and you spend a week, and it feels like it was a day. When you look back, your memory goes, I don't even know, was that long? But then you might have one day that seems like an eternity. You have all these memories from these days. Why? Because the experiences are what changed you. Do you see? Memory and time are funny for us, for human beings, that way. Because when you have experiences, they rank and they list each one, even if it's just experiences one after the other. Everybody with me what I'm trying to explain? It's very important because now usually, like I said, time and experiences go together, right? You see a little bit of gray, a little bit of salt and pepper, they probably know what they're talking about, right? But experiences change anyone, and you can meet people, young people, with very profound experiences. What I'm going to say is this: experiences always change you, but you choose how. Remember I mentioned that earlier, things will change you. Well, now I'm explaining it. You choose how. That's why 2 people can go through the same experience and one be kind and grateful and one be bitter and angry. Happens all the time. We love watching videos like that, right? We put goofy music to it and send it to each other. Somebody who survives some terrible accident, we're like, and you say, awful music. It's like a 4-minute video you send somebody. But it's inspiring. Why? Because they went through something and they allowed it to change them, but they allowed it to change them in a positive way, not in an angry way. Nobody sends a video about somebody who goes through something horrible and becomes a jerk. Nobody sends a video about that. I gotta find videos like that, start sending them. And then I'll get it with like fancy music, so then I can really get to you because you're gonna watch it. He's a terrible person. Like, yeah, that's what you get. Send me another one. Don't ever send me those things. Why? We do these videos all the time. Because we realize you can choose it somehow. Well, why don't you be intentional about it? We decide how. Your free will is so powerful, it limits God. But your free will is also powerful. You use it even when you don't know you use it. You use it even unconsciously. I love it. Human beings are so fascinating. We use our free will even not knowing. We can choose how something changes us. It can make your heart more soft and open, or it can make it hard and closed. You choose how. And gratitude is part of that. Looking back at your experiences, even the ugly ones, with a grateful heart will help you then begin to form it. Can God bring good out of evil? I mentioned that at the beginning. Now the answer, yes. If we let him. If we let him. If we don't, then that's how the evil got there in the first place, right? What did I say? Human beings' free will stop God's goodness. We get evil. But the reaction is also a chance where we get to stop God or let him in. If we let him, if we agree to go with the conductor's time and key, then we make the music back and we bring it back into something powerful. If we don't, then all we're doing is adding to the evil. So moral evil comes into the world because human beings stop, right, use their morality for evil. But also we have another chance. There's a second chance here. When you're going through the evil and after the evil, then and you look at it, you have a chance to choose to cooperate with God, or you can choose not to. And it is completely up to you. And I would propose, if you remember nothing else from this retreat, that's more important. That'll have a greater effect on your soul than everything else I've said. Because understand that every time you encounter somebody who's being, I don't mean gravely evil, maybe they're just being a jerk about it. They're in traffic and they're cutting you off without signal light. You're sitting still and they just start pulling into your lane. It's not grave evil. Unless you do it to me, then it's grave evil. If you do it to anybody else, whatever. Well, but then you have a chance to choose how it changes you. Do you let it get you crazy? We can all see you, by the way, through the windows, screaming and waving your hands. And if there's me, I'm going to look right at you and laugh. What's that 50 Cent gif where he goes by and goes, ha ha, and he drives away? Like, that's me. I'm looking at you laugh. What are you doing? What are you getting crazy for? Relax. Breathe. It's not worth it. And we've all been in an experience where somebody's that way, more relaxed. You're in traffic, coming to this retreat house a few months ago for something else. And I made a turn and I realized I was in the wrong turning lane. I said, oh, this is going to be bad. I'm in the middle of Brooklyn. This is going to be bad. And this guy pulled up and said, hey, you going that way? I said, I mean, if you let me. He said, yeah, sure. I had a cigar. I said, yeah, I got nothing to give you. I'll give you a cigar. He says, I got a wife. I said, ooh, I don't. Ha ha, clipped it. He let me in. He says, I said, I got a wife. You don't got one. I said, no, I don't. Have a great night. He couldn't see the collar under the beard, so I could totally do it. He was like, oh, yeah, all right, go. We were both in the same traffic, and I was wrong. And I don't know how he figured out. I hadn't even turned the signal light. I just thought to myself, just missed the turn, go somewhere else. And it's not worth it. It's New York. It's not worth it. Just go around. I had time to get here. I wasn't in a rush. And this guy just, man, I never saw before, never saw again. Chose, you see, the same situation. You could choose to become what? A maniac. The next light, because we both made the left, he let me in. We met the next light. The guy in front of both of us was a little far back than he should have been from the intersection. And another guy pulled in next to me and just started honking at him. And I just look over and I go, here we go, crazy town. Close my window. I don't want crazy people like that. Thanks. So I close the window and I'm laughing. And I look behind me and the guy who just let me in is crying, laughing in the back of his car. I look to the rear and he's like, and he thumbs up at me. And I thumb up through the rear view and I thumb up. And I go, see, so there's different, same experience. Bro, chill. What's the matter with you? Where are you going? You are not important. You're not. You're just not. As a rule, people who are like that are not important people. Important people have, nope, think about it. Important people, they seem to have a certain level of humility about it. Unimportant people go, I'm important. Okay, a king doesn't have to say he's a king. So when they're smashing on their horn, they're just an awful person being an awful person. You choose how experience changes. Now, did I pick a silly experience? Of course I did. But we've all seen really, really serious ones. I said, go talk to people who use WhatsApp and they'll send you a video of one of those things. Don't you dare. That's why I don't use it. That's why I keep it on silent and I don't use that app and I refuse to. Just because of those videos. Someone will say, do you want something serious? Go ahead. You'll find it. People write books and change other people's lives that went through something terrible. You choose. The last thing I'm going to say is evil of our own doing. The first thing, the whole talk has been about evil that others have caused us because that one has theological importance. Evil of your own doing that you suffered, well, I mean, that's how that works. That's the answer. And you know it. If you did it and you caused it to yourself and you're paying for it, you know. That's why there's never been deep theological discussion about self-caused suffering because of bad choices. Because it's not a theological problem. Because we all get the justice of it. Do you see what I mean? If I steal and I go to jail, I understand that I deserved it. Now, there's plenty of people who say I didn't deserve it, but they're corrupt. They're not going to worry. They're not thinking about philosophy or theology anyway. Those people are monsters. Or they're so egotistical as to not see any existence of anything beyond them anyway. Doesn't matter. So there's no books about suffering that you caused to yourself, because everybody goes, well, don't do that no more. The end. Pay me. Whatever. There's nothing. When you gratitude, but you can look at it with gratitude. The Problem of Pain is another book. C.S. Lewis in it says, and it's beautiful, in The Problem of Pain, he's talking about the problem of evil, but he says, evil's too fancy of a word. I like calling it pain at the beginning of the book. Let's just call it pain. And this is a quote. God whispers to us in our pleasures. God speaks to us in our conscience, but he shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. This is true. Your pain, again, when you've done it and you did it yourself, your pain is just teaching you, hey, don't do that anymore. Right? If I break something or hurt my body, the pain tells you. It's actually not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It tells me something is broken in my body. I need to go to a doctor or whatever, someone, figure it out. Right? Sometimes people have back pains or something and they have to go to someone. And then you find out they had terrible damage to their discs or something and nobody knows because it didn't hurt. Pain is if it's you caused it, and it's often just something speaking to you, telling you, hey, you have to pay attention to this. By the way, emotional and existential pain can be the same thing. You feel something funny about how you spoke to someone. Maybe it's because you shouldn't have spoken that way to them. You know what I mean? You lose your temper, you say something you shouldn't have said. You feel some sort of a weird emotional pain. You're not sure what it is. That's your conscience is waking up. Stressing. Hey, what went on? Oh, I was sleeping. What happened? Yeah. No. That's what's happened. That's your conscience woke up after the tornado of your fury. And your conscience is like, hey, bro, what's going on? And then you realize, I don't feel good. Yeah, because you're not good. That's what that is. Okay? How about we finish with a prayer? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, give us the light to know what to do, and then give us the strength to get it done. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.